Greetings. By virtue of your presence watching this video today, I want you to know that we consider you to be an extended member of our family at Unity in Linwood. We believe that you are an individualized expression of that one creative impetus which stands behind all life, and as such we celebrate the uniqueness which you are, and we celebrate our unity with you. We are glad you're with us.
I think of going to church as being like an old-fashioned piggy bank. Does anyone remember those? Mine was ceramic. It had an ironically clean snout and a pink curly tail. It had a slot in the back, and in its belly it had a cork. Anybody? And even as a child, I remember thinking, what an incredible lack of commitment to have the slot in the back so close to the cork in the stomach. Now, a piggy bank with a slot in the back and no cork, that's commitment. And I think of attending church as being like that old-fashioned piggy bank. You know, Sunday is only one experience. We follow this with classes, with workshops, with soul enrichment opportunities. And like that old-fashioned piggy bank, you're going to love this. What you get in is equivalent to what you get out. This morning, I'd like to acknowledge those who put in a lot. They have completed all requirements of a class we call Unity Basics, and I'd like to welcome them to the platform at this time. It's my understanding that Kathleen McEwen and Amy Whitney and Nancy Merrill and Brian Gillum and Pam Gillum and Donna Nelson are our 11 o'clock honorees. How did I do? Come on up. Come on up. Well, thank you for emailing me, Rosalie. Thank you for being my teachers. Thank you for inspiring me, for enriching me, for asking great questions, for exploring important conversations. What I want you to know about these 5 people, 5, 2, 3, 4, 7 people, 8 people, Nancy Joy, is that they have explored in great depth the very nature of God, the idea that there is an ultimate reality that we call God, that each of us is a part of that ultimate reality because there is none among us who can stand outside of the great all that is. We are not capable of standing outside of ultimate reality itself. They understand and have explored this idea that there is something creative at the core of humanity that for our purposes here we call consciousness, that there is a correlation between this consciousness and the outer experience, that this consciousness, this creative core of humanity can be changed, that through prayer and meditation we can alter that creative core that exists at the core of each one of us, and that in the end the very 5th tenet of unity says not only will they know this, but they will put feet to it. Will you join me in acknowledging and congratulating each of these 8 noble souls, please? I'm humbled to walk with you. I'm grateful to walk with you, and I'm honored to walk with you. Congratulations. Oh, at 12:30 today, we will show a movie. You will hear more about that movie at 12:30. It's called White Like Me. And the movie will be followed by an in-house discussion, which will be facilitated by our own Rabbi Ted Falcon. That in-house discussion will be followed by an online international simulcast. Our community will be one of those communities who will have a voice in that simulcast. So during our in-house discussion, I will be making notes, and then during that international simulcast, I will be granted 90 seconds to tell the world what you think about that experience. Yeah, good luck. What an honor. Please plan to return at 12:30. We will begin sharp. Next Sunday, Paula and Denny Lofstrom return. They are the co-founders of International Health Partners Tanzania. We sent a representation to Tanzania in 2015, was it? 12 people who helped build an orphanage, a birthing center, a children's hospital in Tanzania. They will be rejoining us and bringing us up to date. They will be joined by the Winterlings, who will offer a concert following this service. All you have to do is sign up in the back. We will provide lunch for you to make your presence at the concert easy. I am so glad to see you today. Thank you for coming to see me. What an honor. What a pleasure. What a pleasure. A young man stood in a metro station in Washington, D.C. It was on a January morning. He started to play his violin. And it was during rush hour, so over 1,000 commuters passed by as he played Bach and Massenet and Schubert for over 45 minutes. It was a woman who tossed the first dollar in the general direction of the violinist, but she didn't slow her pace or otherwise initiate any meaningful acknowledgement or interaction. After leaning against a wall for a few minutes to actually listen, another passerby finally looked at his watch and continued on his way. He was obviously tardy. Now, one 3-year-old boy was so fascinated that his mother ultimately had to physically push him forward, and even so, his head continued to turn toward the music until the violinist was completely out of his sight. Oddly, this dynamic occurred again and again and again. Children stopping, parents pushing. During the 45 minutes, 27 individuals gave the young man a total of $32.17 for his work. Not bad, really. Not bad. I mean, according to my math, the young man nets about $42 an hour, around $1,300 per week. I mean, he works when he wants. He takes breaks when he wants. He has no pesky boss with creative last-minute ideas. What are you laughing at? You'll notice on the upcoming video that when he finally stops playing, beyond one kind woman, no one turns. In fact, no one even notices or claps. No one shares a final gesture of acknowledgement. Certainly nobody shares any gesture of appreciation. Now the young man placed his... Sorry about that. Cameron, awesome. The young man placed his violin carefully in his case. Now I say he placed it carefully, and this is true. After all, his violin was one of his most precious possessions, and rightly so. You see, this particular instrument was one of a relatively few instruments crafted in the year 1713. Its maker was an Italian craftsman. His name is common among string players. They call him Antonio Strata Strata what? Help me out here. It's Stradivari of the family Stradivarius. In fact, the young man on today's video paid nearly $4 million for that particular instrument, having raised part of the money by selling his earlier violin for $2 million. It was the one with which he recorded the Oscar-winning score to the movie The Red Violin. Nonetheless, the young man placed his violin carefully in its case, and then he left for the day. He probably had other appointments. After all, he performs over 200 engagements each year in every corner of the globe. In fact, just 3 nights earlier, he had played to a full house at Boston's Symphony Hall, where the cheap seats were eagerly purchased at $100 apiece. And so it was that this young man with 36 original recordings, with countless Grammy Awards, this first American to be named music director of St. Martin in the Fields, this appointee to the Artist Committee of the Kennedy Center Honors, this member of the board of directors of the New York Phil, his name is Joshua Bell, pocketed that $32.17, and he walked out of the Metro. In an echo from a similar experiment that occurred some decades earlier, one reporter concluded rather sadly that the golden notes that rose from his fiddle were swept by the breeze into unlistening ears. Now, it would be easy to conclude that the point of the experiment was to encourage us to stop and smell the roses, inspire us to make our own kind of music, or in the grand tradition of the 1980s, to remind us that we are the world. It would be easy to conclude that the point of the experience was to press us to live in accord with any number of well-meaning song lyrics. And that might have been the point. It would make it easy, after all. I mean, your Sunday lesson could really be quite done at this point. Remember to stop and smell the roses. Have a nice day. Thanks for coming, Remember to make your own kind of music today, Nancy Joy. Thank you for coming. Glad you're here. Have a nice week. It would be equally easy to conclude that the point of the experiment was to highlight the soul-numbing pace of modern life. Can anybody relate? I mean, today, calculations that once required decades are completed in minutes. Communications that once required months occur in seconds. One 500-pound satellite can relay more information between Europe and North America than 175 tons of copper cable using a fraction of the energy. If you think about a 108-story building as your imaginary timeline, it was Peter Russell who sets forth that if street level represents the formation of this planet some 4.5 billion years ago, the first living cells appeared on the 25th floor, photosynthesis on the 50th, oxygen-breathing bacteria on the 60th, cells capable of sexual reproduction on the 70th, multicellular organisms on the 80th, crustaceans on the 94th, fish swimming in the seas on the 97th, fish emerging from the seas on the 99th floor. Dinosaurs ruled in floor 104. Mammals arrived on 110. Homo erectus stumbled out of Africa on 2 legs, only a few inches from the top of the top floor. You see, it took 99.99% of life's journey to reach this few inches from the top of the top floor. And this few inches from the top of the top floor marks the very beginning of humanity. Neanderthals appeared on the last quarter inch. The pharaohs ruled Egypt 1/50th of an inch from the top floor. The Greek and Roman empires 1/100th of an inch. And the Renaissance occurred about 1/1000th of an inch from the top. You see, using a 108-story building as our imaginary timeline, the entirety of modern history occupies a thickness measurable only by a microscope. And the age of the mood ring, the Rubik's Cube, the microchip, nuclear power, space travel, global warming, the internet, and fidget spinners. I still don't know what those are. Fidget spinners is too thin to be measurable at all. All human progress has occurred from an evolutionary standpoint in no time whatsoever. Since the beginning of life, the rate of change has accelerated from billions of years to millions of years to millennia to centuries to decades. The rate of change experienced over the previous 20 years will be duplicated in the next 10 years. Yes, it would be easy to conclude that the point of this experiment was to highlight the soul-numbing pace of modern life, for it's undeniable that wherever we're going, we are getting there faster and faster. Nonetheless, I would forego these conclusions, as valid as they are, for this observation. Joshua Bell, arguably the most highly acclaimed violinist in the world, touting one of the most exquisite instruments on the planet, stood in a metro station in Washington, D.C. on a January morning during rush hour, and he started to play the violin. Nobody noticed. Even those same people who clamored for those $100 cheap seats the night before scurried past, juggling their cell phones and their newspapers and their coffees, dragging their screaming children behind them. And if you're like me, we find ourselves standing together at the obvious question, well, why? Why? And because you gave up a morning worshiping at St. Mattress to be here, I can only assume that you would like to leave with something of a spiritual idea. So here's my best shot at a useful answer. Take a deep breath. We like to draw circles around people and stuff and things. And these circles we draw around stuff, things, and people delineate what we can see from what we can't see. That which falls within our circles, we can see. That which falls outside of our circles, we cannot see. For those in Boston Symphony Hall who drew a circle by labeling a young violinist music director of St. Martin in the Fields, or appointee to the Artist Commission of the Kennedy Center Honors, or member of the board of directors of the New York Phil, they could see transcendent beauty. But for those in that subway station who drew a circle around that same young violinist by labeling him homeless or transient or a nuisance, transcendent beauty was completely beyond their reality. Now, Joshua Bell did not change. I mean, both in Boston Symphony Hall and on that subway platform, Joshua Bell was doing exactly what Joshua Bell is good at doing, and that's being Joshua Bell. So in a very real sense, these circles we draw don't so much limit stuff, things, and people as they limit us. It was Emily Cady who said it this way: the fact is, each one looking at the same world sees according to the size of the aperture through which he is looking, and he limits the world to just his own circumscribed view of it. At which point we must ask the obvious question, well, what are the circles we draw for ourselves? They're easy to spot. They usually begin with statements such as, well, you know, my genetics are... Or, well, you know, my history is... Or, well, you know, my education is... Fill in the blank. And what are the circles we draw for each other then? Another fair question. They usually begin with statements such as, well, you know, liberals are... Or, well, you know, conservatives are... And they extend to, well, you know, women. And, well, you know, men. Well, you know, the gays. Or my favorites, Christians are, or non-Christians are, or good Christians are, or those Christians are. Not to mention Muslims are, and we all know Jews are. We all know Buddhists are. You see, they usually begin with some iteration of, well, you know, those people. I have to wonder if this is what is meant by the proverb, death and life are in the power of the tongue. For in a very real sense, it's the tongue which casts forth the realities which we're willing to allow into our experience. I have to wonder if the fundamental weapon of mass destruction isn't resting between your human teeth. And Unity offers a very real reminder at this juncture in our exploration. For Unity would say that regardless of the circles you have drawn around yourself, circles of disease, circles of lack, circles of limitation, circles of mediocrity, we can draw bigger circles in which the real you can be discovered and welcomed as an unlimited, eternal, and dynamic soul stuff, ever unfolding in its exploration of its infinite, perfect nature. And Unity would say that regardless of the circles we have drawn around each other to this point, circles of race, circles of geography, circles of age, circles of class, and dear God, circles of religion, we can draw bigger circles in which the real we can be discovered and welcomed as a conglomeration of equal and necessary parts, inextricably bound together in a greater whole that we call God. In a very real sense, we as a spiritual community are in the business of drawing bigger circles. Would you turn to someone near you and say, today, I'm drawing a bigger circle for me? And for the wild fun of it, would you choose another welcome face and say, today, I'm drawing a bigger circle for we?
Thanks again for joining us. Please visit unityinlinwood.org for a preview of all upcoming classes, services, and events, and for an opportunity to make a gift to our community should you so choose. Thank you.